let's say Hampton buys a piece of property, buys this house, and at some point, one of the sellers, whether it's Hampton's seller or the previous seller, inherited the property, right? When property is inherited in Kentucky, it can be handled through probate if there's a will, or you can take it to probate and do it that way, or you can have an affidavit of descent. In both of those situations, you're relying on some honesty, is what I would say. So when you open up probate, now don't do a ton of probate law, right?
We have affidavit of descent.
Okay, so an affidavit of descent, if you die without a will in Kentucky, your property goes to your heirs at law by operation of law. The affidavit of descent is the document that you report in the clerk's office that shows who owns that property. So let's just say, Milton, God forbid this ever happens, but you pass away, your property is going to be owned by your heirs. One of your heirs, in order to get that documented with the county clerk, to get it on public record, you can't just say, oh, Milton owned this property and it's still in his name and he died, so we know the owners are, your kids, right? Like, well, no, how somebody that wants to buy that property know the owners are kids? How do we convey title? Who signs on behalf of your property when you pass away? So the affidavit of descent is a document that can be executed by one of the heirs that says, yes, I'm one of the legal heirs of the deceased person, and here are all the other legal heirs that are entitled to this property. And I'm swearing that that's the only heirs at law, and we're recording it, and then that actually vests title in the clerk's office into the heirs' names. So the example that I had in our office was we had a refinance closing come up, and they closed the purchase elsewhere, and the title company, they did close the purchase, did a fine job, they did their due diligence, but they had vested title that way in an affidavit, this was probate. Same thing with probate. When you're in probate, you just sign for ejection. There's all the heirs at law, right? And I'm swearing as the executor administrator that's it. Well, they don't do ancestry.com searches or anything once they open up probate. They take the word of the person because they're swearing under penalty of perjury that they're going to do it. So essentially, this guy bought a property a couple of years ago. It was in here. It was a probate deal, and there was 2 sisters listed on the title. Come to find out, there were 2 brothers that were never named in the probate action. So there was actually 4 kids to this heir. The 2 sisters did probate and never mentioned the brothers. So
how convenient.
Yeah, how convenient, right? And you know what's happened. The sisters already spent the money, right? So that's going to be gone. So we dug up the brothers. The 2 brothers, they're both still alive. And they said, oh yeah, that was our parents' house. I actually didn't know it's sold. That's fantastic. So these 2 brothers owned essentially half of this guy's house, right? So the house is worth well over $200,000, right? And so he was smart and he bought owner's title insurance. So what did the title insurance company do? They reached out to the 2 brothers, wrote them a check, had them convey their interest right over to this guy, and this guy didn't have to lift a finger, didn't have to employ an attorney, anything like that, because he bought a policy that probably cost him $1,500 to close. I don't know what it cost him because it's all based on sales price. But that's a common, not super common, but that's an issue that I think one that's easy to understand. And thank goodness this guy bought owner's title insurance, because had he not, he would have had to pay these guys $80,000, $90,000, whatever their value was worth to actually own his property.
So so to make this really short, if an investor is assigning a contract and owns the property for 5 minutes, you still recommend title insurance.
So I think what you're talking about is a simultaneous close, where they're buying it and selling it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Anytime you put yourself in the chain of title, that's why title insurance. As an investor, you know better than anybody. I'm not a tax professional, but as an investor, the cost is a write-off to you anyway. So you're not paying by the time tax dollars are considered, it's not as much as you would. But if you put yourself in that chain of title, buy title insurance. I think you could have every title attorney in the city of Louisville in here, and they would tell you that on their personal transactions, they buy title insurance. So
buy title insurance, or don't do the simultaneous close and do it Simon.
True. That's true. This episode was brought to you by SurePoint Equity. They're a leading hard money lender, and SurePoint is the go-to partner for real estate. And visit SurePointEquity.com to learn more and get